No poor person survives in Los Angeles, a city once synonymous with endless possibility, now a chilling testament to a dream devoured. Once it was paradise, a shimmering promise whispered across continents, a global beacon of innovation and aspiration, where the sun always seemed to shine on every ambition. Now it's chaos, a monument to systemic failure, a sprawling urban tragedy where the very soul of the city has been traded for profit, leaving behind a haunting question. Why did this city collapse so fast, leaving behind a trail of broken promises and shattered lives? The city that once welcomed the world now pushes out its own, a cruel inversion of its founding myth. We all remember the golden age, the intoxicating allure, the belief that anyone with enough grit could make it here. But the truth behind this descent is far more insidious than you could ever imagine. We all remember the Los Angeles of legend, a place where the sun always shone, where every aspiring artist, entrepreneur, or dreamer could find their footing. It wasn't just a city, it was an idea, a boundless horizon where grit met glamour and hard work could truly pave the way to a better life. We saw it in the films, read about it in books, felt its magnetic pull from halfway across the world, a place where even humble beginnings could lead to extraordinary futures. This was the magic, the undeniable allure that drew millions. But somewhere along the way, that magic began to fade, replaced by a chilling new reality. The shimmering promise curdled into a nightmare, not with a bang, but with a slow, agonizing whisper. The very fabric of opportunity began to fray, stretched thin by an insatiable hunger. Forget the Hollywood glamour, the beachfront mansions, the celebrity culture. Those became a gilded cage, trapping a chosen few while the foundations beneath everyone else crumbled. This wasn't just a shift. It was a betrayal of the city's fundamental ethos, a moral decay that seeped into its very soul. Consider the numbers. In the span of just 2 decades, the median home price skyrocketed by over 300%. Rent for a modest one-bedroom apartment now demands more than 80% of a minimum wage earner's income. These aren't just statistics. They are eviction notices, broken dreams, and the cold, hard proof that the city's economic engine began to devour its own. Essential workers, the very backbone of any thriving metropolis, teachers, nurses, firefighters, found themselves priced out of the communities they served. Their dedicated service, once valued, became a luxury the city could no longer afford to house within its own borders. Many of us have felt that squeeze, that rising tide of expenses that threatens to overwhelm even the most diligent efforts. You've seen your own cost of living climb, perhaps wondered if you could ever truly get ahead. Imagine that feeling amplified 1,000-fold in a city that once promised the exact opposite. It's the gnawing anxiety of watching your paychecks shrink against the relentless march of inflation, the quiet despair of realizing that the goalposts have moved far beyond your reach. But the runaway cost of living was only the first domino to fall. What came next was a systematic dismantling of dignity itself, a set of policies designed not to help but to erase. Wait until you see how the very laws of the city turned against its most vulnerable. And turn they did. The once welcoming public spaces, symbols of shared community, became battlegrounds. The city, rather than confronting the escalating crisis of poverty, chose to criminalize its symptoms. Sleeping on sidewalks, resting in parks, even the basic need for shelter became punishable offenses. This wasn't about helping. It was about erasure, pushing the uncomfortable truth out of sight. The consequences of this dehumanizing shift extended far beyond mere citations. The true fallout was a mass exodus. But first, let's examine the mechanisms that drove out communities. The city's shift from a haven to a hostile environment wasn't accidental. It was a calculated campaign, a series of interlocking mechanisms designed to make the invisible truly disappear. We all remember when Los Angeles neighborhoods pulsed with life, when a local bakery wasn't just a place for bread, but a community hub, a meeting point where stories were shared and friendships forged. Small businesses, run by families for generations, were the beating heart of these areas. providing jobs, character, and a sense of belonging. The dream of opening a little shop, a restaurant, a creative studio, that was as much a part of the Los Angeles promise as Hollywood itself. It was the magic of everyday life, the vibrant tapestry woven by countless individual aspirations. But then, the threads began to unravel. The city, instead of nurturing these vital arteries, started to sever them. Policies emerged, cloaked in terms like urban renewal or public safety initiatives, which, in practice, became instruments of displacement. Suddenly, the very street vendors who provided affordable food and cultural vibrancy were targeted, their livelihoods deemed illegal. Laws were enacted making it a crime to simply exist without means, to sit, to sleep, to even possess a shopping cart in public spaces. These weren't about protecting citizens, they were about scrubbing the city clean of any visible sign of its deepening crisis. The enforcement of these draconian public order laws became relentless, turning once welcoming parks into no-go zones for those without a permanent roof over their heads. The message was clear: when the simple act of resting becomes an offense, when your very presence is seen as a blight. The message was clear: if you couldn't afford to be here, you weren't welcome to even appear to be here. This wasn't just a shift in policy, it was a profound moral decay, a stripping away of human dignity. We've all seen the sterile, soulless city centers that emerge when local character is erased for corporate uniformity. You felt that quiet sorrow when a beloved neighborhood spot closes its doors for good. Now, imagine that happening on a massive scale, orchestrated by the very system meant to protect its people. This systematic dismantling wasn't just pushing individuals out of sight. It was tearing apart the fabric of entire communities. But wait until you see the devastating ripple effect this had on the city's most fundamental resource, its people. The true fallout was a mass exodus, a silent migration born not of choice, but of sheer impossibility. Los Angeles, once the ultimate destination for families seeking a better future, became a place they were forced to flee. We remember the image of a city where a family could put down roots, where a modest income could provide a decent home, good schools, and a chance at upward mobility. This was the foundation of the Los Angeles dream, a bedrock of stability that allowed generations to build their lives. Small businesses, once anchors of employment and local economy, found themselves squeezed from every direction. Exorbitant rents, dwindling local customer bases due to displacement, and an ever-increasing burden of regulations designed for megacorporations, not mom-and-pop shops. The result was a wave of closures, leaving behind empty storefronts like missing teeth in the city's smile. And then there were the essential workers, the teachers who shaped young minds, the nurses who healed the sick, the firefighters who ran towards danger, the very backbone of any thriving metropolis. Once valued, once able to afford a life within the communities they served, these heroes found themselves priced out. Many were forced into agonizing commutes, spending hours on congested freeways just to cling to their vital jobs. Others simply left, seeking solace and affordability in other states, in cities that still understood the value of human capital over speculative wealth. Data painted a stark picture: a measurable decline in middle-income families, a startling increase in supercommuters, traveling hundreds of miles, and a growing shortage of skilled labor in critical public sectors. These aren't just statistics. They are stories of sacrifice, of broken dreams, of a city devouring its own. We all want to feel secure, to raise our children in a place we can call home, to contribute meaningfully to our society. Imagine being forced to leave everything you know, not because you want to, but because you literally cannot survive in the place you've dedicated your life to. It's the profound betrayal of a promise, the gnawing anxiety of watching your community crumble piece by painful piece. This wasn't merely an economic shift. It was a societal fracture, tearing apart the very fabric of what Los Angeles once represented. But the story gets even darker when you consider the silent battles fought by those who tried to stay, caught in a system designed to push them further into the margins. The silent battles were fought not with weapons, but with dwindling resources and vanishing hope. We remember a time when Los Angeles, for all its grandiosity, still upheld a semblance of social responsibility. There were community centers, mental health clinics, and support programs, however imperfect, designed to catch those who fell. The city, in its heart, seemed to understand that a thriving metropolis needed a safety net, a fundamental promise of care for its most vulnerable. This was a part of the city's magic, the belief that even in the shadow of Hollywood, human dignity held some sway. But that promise, like so many others, began to erode. The threads of compassion frayed, then snapped. One by one, essential public services were defunded, repurposed, or simply allowed to wither away. Mental health facilities, once a lifeline for thousands, saw their budgets slashed by over 30% in a single decade. Addiction recovery programs, critical for a population facing immense stress, became increasingly inaccessible, turning vital care into an unaffordable luxury. These weren't mere budget cuts. They were strategic retreats from the very idea of collective responsibility. The city, instead of investing in solutions, chose to divest from its struggling citizens. We've all seen the news, heard the debates about public spending, perhaps even felt the pinch of reduced services in our own towns. But imagine that pinch turning into a crushing grip, leaving you with absolutely nowhere to turn when your world collapses. This systematic withdrawal of support wasn't just neglect. It was an active engineering of despair, pushing people out of sight and out of mind. But the withdrawal of support was just the beginning of a far more sinister strategy. As the formal support structures vanished, a vacuum formed, swiftly filled by the predatory. The city that once championed innovation became a breeding ground for exploitation, where the most vulnerable became easy prey. We remember the ideal of fair dealings, of legal protections that shielded citizens from unscrupulous actors. The law, we believed, was meant to be a bulwark against injustice. But in this new Los Angeles, the law seemed to bend to the will of capital, or simply became too expensive for the poor to access. Landlords, emboldened by a housing crisis of epic proportions, engaged in rampant rent gouging, often neglecting basic maintenance while demanding ever higher sums. Wage theft became commonplace, particularly in the informal economy, where desperate workers had little recourse. Stories of workers toiling for pennies under unsafe conditions became tragically common. Legal aid, once a beacon for those without means, found itself overwhelmed and underfunded, leaving countless individuals without a voice in a system stacked against them. The statistics are chilling. Reports of tenant harassment and illegal evictions surged by over 50% in 5 years, while convictions for wage theft remained shockingly low. These aren't just numbers. They are the silent screams of those trapped in a cycle of injustice, their dignity slowly stripped away. You've probably seen headlines about exorbitant rent hikes or heard whispers of unfair labor practices in your own communities. Now imagine that is your daily, inescapable reality, with no one to champion your cause. It's the profound sense of powerlessness, the realization that the rules are no longer designed to protect you, but to profit from your desperation. And as the city turned its back, a new kind of shadow economy emerged, offering false hope and deeper despair. This shadow economy, born of desperation, offered not solutions, but further entanglement. It was a mirror reflecting the city's moral decay, where the pursuit of survival pushed people into impossible choices. We remember Los Angeles as a place of vibrant communities, diverse neighborhoods buzzing with life, where people from all walks of life found common ground. There was a sense of collective identity, a shared dream, even if it was just the dream of a sunny day. But as the silent battles intensified, this collective spirit began to fracture. The constant struggle, the gnawing anxiety of homelessness, the relentless humiliation of being criminalized for existence itself. These took an unbearable psychological toll. Mental health crises soared, suicide rates climbed, and the very fabric of social connection began to unravel. The isolation became profound. replacing community with a pervasive sense of abandonment. This wasn't just about losing a home or a job. It was about losing hope, losing one's sense of self, losing the very soul that once defined the city. The dream, once so bright, became a heavy shroud, suffocating the human spirit. This isn't just a local problem. It's a stark warning, a chilling forecast of what happens when a society prioritizes capital over humanity, when the pursuit of endless growth trumpets the basic needs of its citizens. The emotional hook here is visceral. The slow, agonizing death of a dream, the betrayal of a promise, and the profound human cost of a system that devours its most vulnerable. This isn't just a story about Los Angeles. It's a microcosm of global trends, a bellwether for what happens when the gap between the ultra-rich and everyone else becomes an unbridgeable chasm. It's a look at how a city, once a symbol of aspiration, transforms into a monument to systemic failure, leaving behind a haunting question. If it can happen there, where can it not happen? This was the ultimate betrayal, as this grand experiment, this city of angels, became a blueprint for a future none of us want to inhabit. But wait until you see the global implications of this local tragedy. We once believed that Los Angeles, with its unique blend of ambition and excess, was an anomaly, its problems distinctly its own, perhaps even a charming quirk of its relentless pursuit of the impossible. We saw it as a grand experiment, perhaps flawed, but ultimately contained, a vibrant outlier on the global stage. This was the comfortable narrative, the reassuring belief that such a profound collapse, this systematic erasure of the poor, couldn't happen everywhere. We thought its struggles were isolated, a consequence of its own unique blend of ambition and glamour, a city so extraordinary that its downfall could only be equally singular. This belief, this perceived uniqueness, was a shield, protecting us from the uncomfortable truth. But that comfort was a lie. A dangerous illusion. The interlocking mechanisms that hollowed out Los Angeles, the insatiable greed that devoured its soul, the systemic neglect that stripped away dignity, the criminalization of poverty itself, these aren't isolated phenomena. They are global trends, echoing in metropolises across continents, from the gleaming towers of London to the sprawling suburbs of Sydney, from the frantic pace of Tokyo to the concrete canyons of New York. Los Angeles became a chilling mirror, reflecting back the vulnerabilities we all share, a stark warning of what happens when the pursuit of endless capital, unfettered by human needs, becomes the dominant ideology. It revealed that this isn't just a local infection, it's a virus, a blueprint for global decay, a warning signed in the fading light of the Hollywood sign, casting long shadows across the world. The dream, once singular, became a universal nightmare. We've seen these insidious patterns emerge with terrifying consistency. Reports from the United Nations Human Rights Office highlight the global surge in urban homelessness, a staggering increase of over 40% in major cities worldwide over the last decade. The wealth gap, once a concern whispered in economic forums, has become a chasm, with Oxfam reporting that the richest 1% now own more than twice as much wealth as 6.9 billion people combined. And the systematic dismantling of social safety nets, once a uniquely American debate, is now a policy exported and replicated, leading to a global crisis of affordability and access, of dignity and survival. These aren't just isolated incidents. They are synchronized movements, a global symphony of systemic failure playing out in every corner of the world. The data screams a universal truth. Los Angeles was not an exception. It was a harbinger, a tragic prophet of a future none of us want to inhabit. This global contagion of inequality, once dismissed as an unfortunate side effect of progress, now threatens to consume the very foundations of urban life everywhere. You've probably felt it too, that creeping unease, the sense that your own city is becoming less accessible, less equitable, a place where the cost of simply existing is spiraling out of control. Perhaps you've watched as beloved local shops close, replaced by soulless chains, or noticed the rising numbers of people struggling on your own streets, their faces etched with a familiar despair. You've wondered if your children will ever be able to afford a home in the place they grew up, if the promise of a stable future has become an increasingly distant mirage. This isn't just a story from far away. It's a reflection of anxieties we all carry, a fear that the promise of stability is slipping through our fingers, everywhere, for everyone. It's the unsettling realization that the ground beneath us is shifting, not just for them, but for all of us, threatening to swallow the very idea of a shared future. But the true horror lies not just in the spread of these problems, not just in the erosion of the dream, but in the insidious way they are normalized, accepted as an inevitable cost of progress, a necessary sacrifice on the altar of perpetual growth. What happens when the unimaginable becomes merely the mundane? We once believed in collective action, in the inherent power of community to overcome adversity. We remembered a time when social injustice, when visible poverty on such a scale, would have sparked outrage, a demand for change, a moral uproar that echoed through the streets. There was a moral compass, however imperfect, that guided our collective conscience, a shared understanding that certain conditions were simply unacceptable in a civilized society, that humanity would always reject such blatant disregard for its most vulnerable. But somewhere along the way, that compass shattered. The relentless exposure to urban decay, the constant stream of stories about hardship has desensitized us all. What once shocking has become mundane. The sight of tents lining freeways, the struggles of families living in their cars, the growing desperation. These are no longer aberrations. They are simply the city. This normalization of despair is the most dangerous consequence of all, because it disarms our collective will to act, rendering us impotent observers. It tricks us into believing this is the natural order, rather than a catastrophic failure of design, a moral decay that has infected the very soul of our societies. Wait until you see how this acceptance paves the way for a future none of us truly desire, a future where hope itself becomes a luxury. The normalization of despair isn't just a passive acceptance, it's an active surrender, a quiet capitulation to a future where the very concept of progress has been inverted. We once believed in a trajectory of upward mobility, a world where each generation could realistically aspire to a life better than their parents. This wasn't just a quaint notion, it was the bedrock of the American dream, a promise etched into the very identity of Los Angeles. The City of Angels was, for decades, the ultimate canvas for this aspiration, a place where the magic of reinvention seemed perpetually possible, where hope felt as abundant as the sunshine. It was the land of second chances, of bold ambitions, where the horizon always seemed to stretch a little further, promising more. This was the vibrant core of its soul, the belief that hard work, talent, and a bit of luck could open any door. But that promise, that foundational belief in a better tomorrow, has been systematically dismantled, piece as agonizing piece. The magic didn't just fade, it was actively extinguished, replaced by a brutal new reality where hope itself has become the ultimate luxury, reserved only for those already privileged. Los Angeles, once the symbol of upward mobility, now stands as a stark monument to its opposite, a rigid, almost feudal class system, where the chasm between the ultra-rich and the perpetually struggling has become an unbridgeable canyon. The dream of homeownership, once attainable for working-class families, is now a distant fantasy, requiring decades of saving for a down payment that often exceeds a lifetime's earnings. Consider the chilling statistics. Studies from the University of California show that intergenerational social mobility in Los Angeles has plummeted by nearly 30% in the last 2 decades, meaning fewer children are surpassing their parents' economic standing. The median income required to afford a modest home has surged to well over 6 figures, while average wages for essential services workers have stagnated, growing by less than 10% in the same period. These aren't just abstract numbers. They are the shattered reflections of futures that never materialized, the quiet despair of parents realizing their children face a bleaker path. We've all seen the reports, the headlines screaming about the shrinking middle class, the growing wealth disparity. You've probably felt that quiet dread yourself, looking at the cost of living, wondering if you or your children will ever truly get ahead, if the future holds more security or less. It's the gnawing fear that the ladder has been pulled up, that the rules have changed, and the game is rigged. This isn't just an economic shift, it's a moral crisis, a betrayal of the collective future, leaving a generation adrift. But the ultimate price of this societal amnesia, of this deliberate blindness, is yet to be fully revealed. A cost measured not in dollars, but in the very fabric of human connection. The cost, the true agonizing cost, is the erosion of empathy, the fraying of the social contract that binds us all. We remember a time when, despite our differences, there was a shared understanding, a basic human connection that transcended economic status. There was a sense of collective responsibility, a belief that we were all in this together, that the suffering of one diminished us all. This was the hidden magic of community, the unspoken bond that offered solace and support even in the toughest times. It was the soul of a city, the beating heart that fostered compassion and a willingness to reach out. But that heart has been slowly, systematically hardened. The relentless pressure of survival, the constant exposure to suffering, combined with the normalization of despair, has created a profound empathy deficit. The city, once a melting pot of cultures and dreams, has fractured into isolated islands of wealth and desperation, each increasingly invisible to the other. The narrative shifted from "how can we help" to "why are they here?" The very act of seeing another person's struggle transformed from a call to action into an inconvenience, a visual blight to be swept away. This wasn't a sudden change, it was an insidious creep, a gradual desensitization that allowed the suffering to become background noise. We've all been there, perhaps, walking past someone in need, averting our gaze, telling ourselves it's their problem or the system's fault. You felt that flicker of guilt, that uncomfortable tension between compassion and the overwhelming feeling of helplessness. Imagine that flicker turning into a permanent shadow, casting a pall over every interaction, every public space. This erosion of empathy isn't just a personal failing, it's a societal sickness, a direct consequence of a system that prioritizes capital over humanity. It allows the powerful to justify their inaction, to rationalize the suffering as an inevitable outcome rather than a preventable tragedy. It replaces the magic of shared humanity with the cold logic of self-preservation, leaving communities hollowed out and disconnected. But the most terrifying consequence of this moral decay is the loss of our collective future, the slow death of the very idea of a shared destiny. The loss of a collective future isn't a metaphor. It's the chilling reality of a society that has abandoned its most vulnerable. We once believed in the idea of a shared destiny, a future built together, where the prosperity of one contributed to the well-being of all. Los Angeles, with its diverse populations and grand ambitions, was meant to be a testament to this, a crucible where different dreams could fuse into a common, brighter tomorrow. This was the true, enduring magic of the place, the promise that a collective effort could overcome any challenge, that the city's soul resided in its people, united. But that shared destiny has been irrevocably fractured. The relentless pursuit of individual wealth, untethered from any sense of social responsibility, has created a zero-sum game, where one person's gain is another's devastating loss. The city's infrastructure, once a symbol of collective investment, now crumbles for some while gleaming new towers rise for others. Public education, once a pathway for all, struggles under the weight of underfunding, while private institutions flourish. The very air we breathe, the water we drink, the public spaces we once shared. These are increasingly segregated, privatized, or simply neglected for those without means. Data from environmental justice groups reveals that low-income communities in Los Angeles suffer disproportionately from pollution and lack of green spaces, experiencing higher rates of respiratory illness and reduced life expectancy. The promise of a clean, healthy city for all has become a cruel joke for those on the margins. You've seen the stark contrasts in your own cities, the gleaming glass of downtown juxtaposed with the decaying neighborhoods just blocks away. You've felt the frustration of declining public services, perhaps worried about the future of your own local schools or parks. This isn't just about economic inequality. It's about the deliberate dismemberment of a shared future, a systematic dismantling of the very idea of a common good. It's the ultimate betrayal, the realization that the city's soul, once a beacon of collective aspiration, has been traded for the fleeting illusion of private gain. And as the city continues its descent, the final, most devastating truth emerges. The very definition of what it means to be human within these crumbling walls is being rewritten. This rewriting of humanity's definition is the city's final, most chilling act. We remember a time when human dignity was inherent, when the mere fact of existence conferred a basic right to respect and consideration. Los Angeles, for all its superficiality, once held a deeper truth, that beneath the glitz and glamour, every person had value, every story mattered. This was the quiet magic, the underlying humanity that prevented the city from becoming a mere economic engine. But in its collapsed state, the city has become a machine that grinds away at this fundamental truth. The poor are no longer seen as struggling individuals, but as an inconvenience, a problem to be managed, a blight to be erased. Their humanity is stripped away, their voices silenced, their very existence criminalized. They become statistics, footnotes, invisible shadows in a city that once celebrated every dream. The system, designed to protect, now devours. The city, once a haven, now a hostile wilderness. This isn't just about economic status. It's about the profound dehumanization that occurs when a society abandons its moral compass, when the pursuit of capital eclipses all else. It's the ultimate erasure, leaving behind not just empty pockets, but empty souls, and a haunting question. What kind of future awaits us all if this is the path we continue to tread? What kind of future awaits us all if this is the path we continue to tread? Look closely. Empty tables, empty streets, empty dreams. The magic is gone. The sun still shines, but its warmth no longer reaches everyone. The golden promise, once whispered across continents, has curdled into a bitter truth. No poor person survives in Los Angeles. It's a city that devoured its own soul. An echo of what happens when capital triumphs over compassion, when endless growth trumps basic human needs. This isn't just a local problem. It's a stark warning, a chilling forecast of what happens when a society prioritizes capital over humanity, when the pursuit of endless growth trumps the basic needs of its citizens. It's a microcosm of global trends, a bellwether for what happens when the gap between the ultra-rich and everyone else becomes an unbridgeable chasm. If it can happen there, where can it not happen? But even in this ruin, a flicker of something remains. A question, a challenge. Maybe there's still hope, not for the city it once was, but for the lessons it has etched into our collective consciousness. Imagine a different dawn. Not the Los Angeles of yesterday, but a future where the glow of humanity, not just wealth, illuminates our cities. A world where empathy isn't a luxury, but a foundation. A city glowing in silence, whispering its warnings, but also its potential for rebirth, if we choose to listen. We saw it happen. We witnessed the slow, agonizing death of a dream, the profound human cost of a system that devours its most vulnerable. We watched a global beacon turn into a monument to systemic failure. The evidence is undeniable, etched in the faces of those forced to leave, in the empty storefronts, in the silent despair. It's time we remember what it used to mean, not just for Los Angeles, but for every city that aspires to be a home for all. It's time we confront the uncomfortable realities, not just about one city, but about our own future and the fragile foundations of modern society. It's time to ask, what will we do with this truth? If you've felt this change too, if you've seen your own community grappling with these insidious forces, share your story in the comments below. Your voice matters. And if you found this eye-opening, if this journey through the ruins of a dream resonated with you, subscribe. The next story might just reveal where everyone's going next and what we can do to reclaim the promise of a shared future.